I woke up and I was craving my delicious gluten-free banana bread. So I'm sharing my recipe with you as well as how I do it and the few techniques that I've added to make this a really, really yummy banana bread with an amazing texture. So I hope you try this, and if you do, comment below and let me know how it turns out. So here I'm starting with 1 cup of almond flour. The almond flour that I have is a 365 brand by Whole Foods. It works really great, but if you have a different brand, it'll work just as good. And then also I'm using 1 cup of 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, and this brand is Bob's Red Mills. I really like this flour. It's kind of like their all-purpose gluten-free flour. So I added 1 cup of almond flour in the sifter, then I'm adding 1 cup of 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, and then also I like to sift my flours when I'm baking. It just makes it easier. I don't have to worry about like clumps and lumps. And then here I'm adding 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And I like to store my baking soda in an airtight container. And then I just usually keep in the refrigerator until I need it. And then just use it accordingly. And then also a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. A little sea salt goes a long way. And then I just sift everything. So that's pretty much the dry ingredients, with the exception of the spices that I'll add towards the end. And then I'm actually looking towards my left because I'm chatting with my 5-month-old daughter. She's just sitting in our bouncer and watching me and just waiting for me. And that was it for the dry ingredients. I kind of just like mixed everything, set that bowl aside. In a new bowl, I added 2 eggs. I like to add the eggs first in the bowl because I'm able to whisk. So this is one of the techniques that I use when I'm making a banana bread. So after I add the eggs to the bowl, I whisk them. By whisking the eggs, I'm able to incorporate air into the eggs, and also by doing this, it'll make the batter lighter and fluffier, and you'll see it. I'll show you in the end. I'll squeeze like a slice of the bread, and you'll see how it turns out. So I always try to clean up too. I'm a classically trained chef, so I think that's just instilled in me to just clean up as I go. It just makes my life easier too, especially after when I'm, baking or cooking. So I forgot to grease the loaf pan when I started, so I added a little coconut oil, and I'm just brushing the oil all in the pan. So that's what I use. I don't use cooking spray. I usually use coconut oil or butter. And then back to the eggs. So the eggs that I whisk, I'm adding 2 bananas. So I'm adding 2 bananas to the eggs. And what I do is just the bananas, the riper the better. So these are pretty ripe, and you can always do a little more, but I think 2 for this recipe is perfect. And I'm using here potato masher, and it just works really well. I don't really make a lot of mashed potatoes, so I think the potato masher is pretty much used for when I'm making banana bread. It's just the way it is. So I love that tool for this particular reason. And then what I like to add in my banana bread is the zest of fresh lemon. It elevates it. The notes of the citrus is really nice. So I added the zest of 2 lemons, and I always save the lemons. I don't toss them because I can always use them at a later time. And then just kind of whisk it together. So it won't be like eggy too. Like you won't really, I think the zest just like cancels out that like eggy smell and taste. And here I'm adding a 1/2 cup of coconut oil. You can use butter. Sometimes I will use butter if I don't have coconut oil, but I brown the butter. So that's kind of what I do. And I was a little low on honey, so I'm letting the honey drain into the measuring cup while I'm trying to open this little vanilla bottle. So I'm adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And like I said, I didn't have a lot of honey, so that's kind of like just, letting it drain. While that was happening, I added 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg to the dry ingredients, as well as a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon to the dry batter as well. And that completes all the dry ingredients. So back to my honey. I was only able to get a 1/4 cup of honey, so I improvised. I added the 1/4 cup of honey to the wet ingredients, as well as 1/4 cup of brown sugar. So that's kind of what I did because, like I said, I didn't have a lot of honey, and that's kind of me just improvising because I'm able to do that. And that's the wet ingredients. So it was ready to go. So I just mixed the dry ingredients quickly before adding the wet ingredients, and that was pretty much it. So once I added the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients, I folded everything. So some people say they mix. I don't mix because I don't like to make it like mushy. That's what I'm doing doing right there is folding. And it's only a few folds, and then once everything is incorporated and you no longer see like dry spots, then it's time to add it to the loaf pan. As you saw earlier, I greased my loaf pan with the coconut oil, and that was pretty much it. So I just scraped everything out, and the oven was preheated to 350 degrees. It's always good to have your oven preheated. So I was ready to add my loaf pan with my batter into the oven. Then I set the timer for 50 minutes. So that's what it takes, 50 minutes, and it always comes out perfectly every time. And this was a great opportunity for me to clean up, because I like to clean up after I'm finished, or also during the process, because it just makes it easier, and then it's not, it doesn't deter me from wanting to cook or bake. Then it was time for a nice sip of water. So I was pretty thirsty actually, so I drank some water. And then I hung out with my daughter. There she is. That's Aubrey. She's 5 months old. And it was a perfect opportunity for me just to hang out with her and play with her while the banana bread was baking. So here it is. I'm actually pulling out a cake tester, and the timer went off. Look how perfect that looks. And check out the color. It is perfect. I'm very happy with it. I make this banana bread a lot, and I just wanted to share with you guys how easy it is to accomplish a delicious banana bread that is homemade. So that's the cake tester. Once it goes in and it comes out dry, that's when you know it's done. So before it cools completely, I always loosen the sides. This helps once it's time to remove it from the loaf pan. So that's kind of another thing that I like to do, and you'll see how it turns out. That's it. When it comes out and it's time for it to cool, it comes out in one piece. To me, that's my perfect banana bread, and it is delicious. I mean, check that out. I have to show that to you again. Look how amazing that looks. You can achieve this. I pretty much gave you all the ingredients, step-by-step recipe, and this is what I was talking about. I'm going to show it to you. When I squeeze it, you see how that kind of just bounces back a little, and of course I had to taste it. So if you've made it this far, thank you for joining. If you're new, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thanks for hanging out with me. Bye.